You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we are back with our bi-weekly women's hockey spotlight, welcoming Erica L. Ayala to talk all things women's hockey. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you so much. Another week where we get to talk women's hockey on the Locked On Podcast Network. Always a good time, and good to see Seth here. I mean, you know, we kind of connect every day on Locked On Kraken, but now we get to chat hockey together.
Yeah, I'm always glad to step in whenever needed for pretty much any show, and always good to see you, Erica. Like you said, we interact a lot behind the scenes, but always good to get that FaceTime too.
That's it. And love that we have a representative from the state of hockey as we are about to talk about the USA, at least, roster for the Rivalry Series. So the United States and Canada for several years now have really been making this a mainstay of the schedule, getting ready for Worlds, especially important when we have an Olympic year. So gearing up for 2026, which is kind of wild. And, I think there are definitely some names that we recognize, actually 24 carryovers from the last World Championships, and also some new blood. So I always wonder, Rachel, when we are kind of getting closer to the time where everyone's starting to think about the lead up to the next Olympics, how much we read into the tea leaves when it comes to these rivalry series rosters. But, I want to head to you first here. Is there any player that really stands out? I think I have a few names you might mention, but who stands out to you as far as someone that you're eager to see skate for USA?
Yeah, the thing is, I think it's really smart for them to stay consistent from this past Worlds because they were integrating some younger players into the lineup for that tournament. Now, unfortunately, they did not get the gold medal. Well, unfortunately for me, because I'm a USA fan. But I think that, they made a lot of progress on that front. So it's good to see a lot of the younger players back. And I think that, you look at Joy Dunn, who obviously sister to Jinsey being on the team is a really good thing to see. I think Tessa Janicki was a really good addition to the lineup as well. But you still have some of those vets, and you have your solid goaltenders in Erin Frankel, Nicole Hensley, and Gwyneth Phillips is the third goaltender there. But I just really feel like this is a good balance, and like it's a really good thing for them to work toward another Worlds where maybe this group can then take that next step.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of that consistency, and that's going to be really important. From the last Olympics, Seth, we know that this team, USA Hockey, has gone through a lot of coaching changes before the Olympics in Beijing, after the Olympics. We know that, players like Brianna Decker, who suffered a terrible injury in that Olympics.
Yeah.
She has since retired from USA Hockey. So some of this young blood is really good here. And I think, someone that I always take a look at is, when you think of Layla Edwards and being able to play for Wisconsin, I know that's a little bit, it's not necessarily what you want to hear, Seth, being from Minnesota, but all that being said, being in that WCHA territory, how just elite these programs are, and to have a player like Layla Edwards once again as a part of this roster, really being able to put a stamp on USA Hockey, you have to think is a good thing.
Oh, for sure. And, I just like that you have players all the way down at that collegiate level, and you go all the way up to having some of that winning pedigree that the Minnesota Frost are able to bring to the table. And, you got the big names on the roster: Kendall Coyne Schofield, Taylor Heisey, Grace Zumwinkle, Kelly Panic, like big pieces that were able to help Minnesota Frost to the Walter Cup in their inaugural season. Like they know what it takes, especially when the chips are down too, I think is an important part of this puzzle. Like not everything's going to go right every game, every shift, every period. And so having those vets, having that winning pedigree on this roster is going to help be able to put this roster in position of, hey, we're down by 2 goals. Let's go get one, get back into this. Like as much as Team USA wants everything to just go according to plan the whole time, it's not going to. And so anytime you have players that can pull you in the direction you need to go, you're doing good things.
Yeah, and I think what you're also talking about is that there's a nice blend of players that have been there, done that, and again, players that are coming up. And I think that USA hockey has struggled in that area. I mean, Kendall Coyne-Schofield, definitely Hillary Knight. I mean, they came up as such young players and are still elite level players. And now you look at a Kayla Barnes. I don't even know, Rachel, if we can consider her in baby vet territory anymore. I mean, she's been around for a while.
Yeah.
Again, that speaks to how young you can come up in hockey, right? And make a name for yourself, especially on the international stage, which is what we certainly see for USA hockey and their development plan. But, you know, what is that balance from what Seth is saying, the good parts, right, of having that veteran leadership? But at some point in time, you have to also make sure that those players, that they're not like, oh, well, Kendall Coyne-Schofield's on the ice, so I'm going to defer and default to that. Or Hillary Knight is on the ice, Kelly Panic is on the ice, I'm going to defer and default to that. You know, there has to be also, I would imagine, Rachel, something where the coaching staff is really building up and integrating, whether it's through lines and deep pairs or just expectations of putting aces and places on the ice.
Yeah, and it is interesting because you do have a roster of 17 PWHL pro players, 9 NCAA players. And so those NCAA players are going to naturally default to those professional players, but some of those college players have to start taking leadership roles in order to make this team successful, I think. And that'll be the interesting part. There's 3 games in the rivalry series that starts November 6th and goes through November 10th, but it's all out west in San Jose. And then Salt Lake City, though they're not playing at the Delta Center, they're playing at the Maverick Center where the ECHL team in Salt Lake plays. And then Boise, home of Hillary Knight. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. Well, Idaho is home of Hillary Knight, not Boise specifically.
Right.
But,
yeah. Which is interesting because I don't think we've ever had a rivalry series out there. And if we read into the tea leaves, I'm just saying, as far as US soccer, sometimes they'll do some of those. Is it too early? I don't know. I'm putting
I don't know.
I don't know. Is it too early? Am I jinxing it? I'm just saying, like, you know, DT is not, if this is the end is what we're getting in the WNBA right now. I don't know.
Yep.
Is Hillary Knight going to be a little more forthcoming? We'll find out. Speaking of the PWHL, we've mentioned it a few times. And also, like, I wanted to go back to this. Do they get to say that PWHL Minnesota, is that what goes on the trophy, or do they now just use Frost? Like, hey, I mean, they weren't the Frost when they won. Just saying. You know, interesting logistics that keep me up at night.
Yeah, that's a great point that I had not previously considered until this moment. And I don't know, like I could see both sides of it because you did that to get the league going.
Yeah.
And so do you want to have that as kind of a remembrance of the inaugural season, or do you want to shift to usher in this new era?
Yeah.
Maybe they do both.
Who knows? You know, like, I don't know. Maybe if they count one season in dog years, then you can have like the NHL or even in MLB. It's like, you know, you have people who are Expos fans or they are Brooklyn Dodgers fans, but they are not, you know, they don't root for the Nationals. It was the Nationals, right? I think so. The Nationals.
That was the Expos. Yeah.
They don't root for the Mets, for example, or the LA Dodgers. They root for their team. So I don't know. Are we going to have some PWHL Minnesota faithful? But we do know that the PWHL is going to do mini camps. And I think this is really interesting because we've seen this. I'm talking specifically from the Locked On Kraken perspective because we're the newest team. Well, Yes, we're the newest expansion team on the block. And so this is the first time we got to see our players compete in a rookie camp. And I think there is something to when you have a competition outside of the organization that it really helps assess things. It helps, get the players kind of just ready for action and also an expectation to come into camp with a certain level of fitness. And so we're going to see, Rachel, that this is something that the PWHL is continuing on, and Montreal is going to kind of host a few teams for these mini camps.
Yeah, and Ottawa is going to host the other teams in the mini camps as well, which all leads to camp rosters are due to the league October 10th. So they're going to take advantage of these mini camps, have some amateur tryouts, whittle that down and get training camp rosters in so that hopefully we can get going. And then when are we starting the season, Erica?
And that's the big question. I will be honest. I think I just assumed based on what we had heard last year, we know they started on January 1. And they had said to us that in the future we'll move to a different schedule. But now it kind of feels like maybe we are going to see a later season. I mean, they're not going to be ready to start if like you said, the rosters are due, in October. They're not going to be ready to drop the puck. It doesn't sound like. But then we just talked about the rivalry series, and you're going to have a decent amount of players from USA and Canada that are going to need to be at the rivalry series. So does that mean we have a late December, January start again, Rachel?
I would hope they'd start mid-December so that at least it's like we have something leading into the holidays. It would probably behoove them to be able to sell some merch at games before Christmas. So from a business perspective, I would hope, they would get things going. But because if they come out of the rivalry series, go straight into main training camp and then could start around early mid-December, that would probably be the best timing for them. They do have several new arenas, so figuring out logistics is a challenge.
Right.
Figuring out the schedules in those rinks may be a challenge. So who knows? We don't know yet. Could be happening right now. Could happen in 2 weeks. We don't know.
We don't know. And maybe this is a lead up, right, Seth, to say, hey, we have this rivalry series and then we're going to go right into the season instead of maybe a start stop. Maybe that's a possibility.
It feels like you want to have a little momentum going as you get this season started. And, there are some other key pieces that still need to take place for the PWHL season, i.e. the schedule. Need to have a few things still ironed out, but I do like the idea of kind of ramping up and pushing into the PWHL season with a few events leading up to it, because I think it just gets people more excited and kind of creates that buzz as opposed to going through the rivalry series, a little bit of a pause, and then trying to get that car to start up again, so to speak. Yeah. I feel like just continuing to kind of ramp up and amp up is definitely the route that should be taken.
Yeah, for sure. Well, either way, we do know that teams like Toronto, they have their season ticket holders locked in. So whatever the games are, it's good to see that there is definitely demand for women's hockey. And this is a league that's brand new. They can be nimble. And if I had to guess, it's exactly, Seth, what we just talked about. They're going to use the rivalry series as a ramp up. This was kind of the vision, I think, overall for what this league that we now know as the PWHL was always intended to be. And so this seems like a prime opportunity, but that's just what we think. No one's hiring us to run the league. So we will have to see what happens, and we will keep you posted on the next Women's Hockey Spotlight.